You know where you are. You know what God's doing in your life. The question is, do you sense the Father at work in anything around you? Do you sense what He's doing? Do you feel the tug to say, hey, I really need to get involved. I really need to start tithing. I really need to be more generous. I want to get involved in the Prevail campaign. I need to serve in a ministry. I see everything that's happening in our church, and God is pulling me in. Paul said this to his followers in 1 Corinthians 11. He said, follow my example as I follow Christ. And Paul did his best to imitate Christ. And then he tells those that are coming in his wake to do the same. He says, basically, I don't want you to innovate. I don't want you to recreate. I want you to imitate. So in everything that you do, in every situation you face, in every conversation that you have with friends or coworkers, yours and my responsibility in following Jesus is to imitate Him in the way that He sought the Father's perspective. One other thing that He did is this. He actually practiced God's pattern. And what do I mean by that? Well, here's the question for you. How much of what you do on the daily would you say is what you see the Father doing? Are you connected to God in such a way that a large portion of your day is filled up with God activity? Or are you just too busy for that? Philippians says it is God who wills and works in you to act according to His good purpose. If you want to see God transform your life, you're going to have to get involved with what He's doing. You're going to have to practice His pattern. You see, seeking God's perspective is about how you see things, but practicing God's pattern is about how you walk it out. So let's just think about how to practice God's pattern with a couple of case studies, and then we'll wrap up together this morning. The first thing is that you're in a grocery store, and you recognize that there's somebody there, and you see them, they haven't recognized you yet, and you start thinking, I think I saw them at a church event, but I don't really know them, and honestly, I don't really have time for a long conversation. But there's just something going on in your gut that tells you need to walk over there, you need to introduce yourself. You might even need to extend an invitation to these folks. So how do you practice God's pattern? How do you see God at work? Well, you've noticed them. You've seen them around church. You think that they're a new family. They might need a church home. You recognize God might even be in this. And so here's what I'm going to invite you to do. Follow the spiritual impulse. Follow it. You get a little nudge inside of you that says, hey, don't talk yourself out of this one. Walk over there, take 7 minutes, have a conversation. You see Jesus do this all the time. There's a lady where Jesus is all through the crowds and she touches the hem of His robe. You remember the story? And He turns and He says he felt the power left Him and He ends up healing the lady. He's teaching the multitudes, but some friends are lowering someone through somebody's roof into the place, and in the interruption, He demonstrates His power by allowing that interruption to really be His ministry that particular moment. You see Zacchaeus. The children's song is coming to mind as we speak, I'm sure. But Jesus says, hey, I want you to come down. We're going to go eat at your house today. All of these things were interruptions, but Jesus saw that God was drawing people, and so He went where the Father was working. How much of your day includes that? Let me give you another case study. Jesus said, if anybody wants to be my disciple, he must first deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me, right? So maybe there's a financial need that you've been made aware of. You know that you don't really have the ability to truly give the way, that you need to because of how you've structured your financial picture, but you sense God's kind of doing something, and He wants to meet you here. So how do you practice God's pattern? Because, you see God at work. Maybe even asking you to do something you've never done before. So what do? Well, you get creative. Maybe you say no to something that's coming up. Maybe you need to sell something that's valuable to you so that you can participate. Jesus asked this of the rich young ruler, did He not? Told him to sell everything that he had and give to the poor. Rich young ruler went away because his heart was attached to his possessions and wealth, and he missed out on what God had for him. All that young man had to do was submit, call the audible, and follow Jesus. Case number 3. You see everything that God's doing in your church, and you know that all this new discipleship talk, it's new, but it's kind of not new, and you're trying to figure out how to get involved. You feel the weight, like, I really do want to be a part of that. You feel the need to be invested into and learning to invest into the lives of others. Can I just say God wants to meet you there? So here's the question. How do you practice God's pattern if you see Him at work? You see Him everywhere around you, maybe even pulling you and your entire family into a new type of thinking and learning and growing. Here's what you could do. You might consider changing your schedule so that you can do whatever you have to do to prioritize this in life. Because if you see the Father in it, my encouragement to you is to go there. Jesus said it to His disciples. He said, come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And it says that Peter and Andrew and James and John says in that moment they dropped everything. These people even left their family heritage, their family business right in front of their Father's eyes to follow Jesus because they saw the Father at work. What will be said of you? And I guess that's the final case study, is your situation right now. You know where you are. You know what God's doing in your life. The question is, do you sense the Father at work in anything around you? Do you sense what He's doing? Do you feel the tug to say, hey, I really need to get involved. I really need to start tithing. I really need to be more generous. I want to get involved in the Prevail campaign. I need to serve in a ministry. I see everything that's happening in our church, and God is pulling me in. Maybe you're sitting there today and you go, this whole thing that Matt's talking about, I've never sensed that or felt that. Maybe it's because you don't know Jesus. Maybe that's the pull, is you need to surrender your life to Christ. The question is, will you seek out God's perspective? Will you practice God's pattern? Will you do what He's asking you to do? Jesus modeled it. This is one of the critical ways to hearing from God, is to get off the couch and get out and walk in His direction.